10 gemstones too unique to ever sell. Not every rare gemstone is priceless, and not every priceless gemstone can be sold. The global gem market runs on clarity, grading, provenance, and demand. But every few decades, a material appears that doesn't fit any of those systems. It can't be appraised. It can't be insured. It might not even survive exposure to light or air. And even if someone wanted to buy it, no formal channel exists to facilitate the sale. Some of these stones are chemically unstable. Some exist in quantities too small to classify. Some have no market history, no comparables, and no replacement inventory. And others? They've already been absorbed into national collections or withdrawn permanently by those who understand their risks. This is not a list of the most expensive gems, and it's not about superstition, mythology, or speculation. This is about 10 genuine gemstones that were mined, studied, and documented, but ultimately excluded from the systems that determine commercial value. Not by accident, but because their very nature defied classification. These are the gemstones that cross a line. They still exist. They've been cut, held, and examined, but they are too unique ever to sell. Don't forget to press and hold that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe before we begin. Ranked 10th, Chrysoberyl cat's eye, the gem that refuses to be seen twice. Under soft ambient light, the stone appears modest, but when illuminated from the side by a focused but gentle beam, a phenomenon emerges. Two parallel rays flash across the surface. Both move as the angle shifts. Not a single cat's eye, but a dual-track alignment. It's not a lighting trick. It's not a surface reflection. It's real and observable, but only under extremely narrow conditions. The mineral is chrysoberyl, beryllium aluminum oxide 4, known in gemology for producing sharp chatoyancy due to aligned rudal inclusions. Commercially, the cat's eye is familiar, but the dual eye effect, where two reflections move independently, is almost undocumented and nearly impossible to recreate. Sri Lankan miners from Ratnapura have informally recorded this for over a century. In their own words, this version of chrysoberyl only shows itself under moonlight or storm season light, not under daylight, not under lab fluorescence. It defies standard gem testing environments, and that's where its problem begins. A specimen recorded in 1977 showed consistent twin-ray behavior under partial eclipse lighting. The collector, based in Colombo, refused to sell, even when offered 5 times the value of a fine cashmere sapphire. In his own words, "I wasn't buying it. I was the third person to hold it. None of us ever sold." GIA reports do not recognize the dual eye category. These stones are logged as standard cat's eye chrysoberyl, sometimes noted as unusual reflection. But no standard laboratory conditions guarantee the twin ray appearance. That makes pricing, or even listing, nearly impossible. 2 high-profile auction houses have declined to handle them. One specimen failed to display its signature effect under spotlight conditions at Christie's. Another was preserved in nitrogen to prevent dehydration, but lost the twin ray behavior after atmospheric exposure. Neither was successfully offered to the market again. In Sri Lankan cultural contexts, particularly among Sinhalese ceremonial traditions, these stones are sometimes held as ritual objects, not worn. The belief is that a dual eye only manifests when the viewer has unresolved internal conflict. While not a commercial factor, the folklore contributes to why these stones rarely move. There's no way to stabilize the optical effect, no way to reproduce it, and no reliable way to grade it. It does not fit gemological frameworks. It does not meet repeatability standards. It cannot be compared, benchmarked, or predicted. These specimens are not outside the market because no one wants them. They remain unsold because no one can confirm whether what they see is what others ever will. Ranked 9th, the Logan Sapphire, the gem that can never return to market. 423 carats. Untreated, flawless under magnification. With these 3 attributes alone, the Logan Sapphire does not belong in any conventional gemstone category. It is the largest faceted blue sapphire in the National Gem Collection of the United States, and among the largest known untreated sapphires on Earth. But its story is not about origin or price. It's about what happens when an object crosses the threshold of ownership and enters a different system. One that cannot sell, trade, or value what it holds. Mined in Sri Lanka during the British colonial period, likely between the late 19th and early 20th century, the sapphire was not cut for jewelry. It was cut for recognition. At over 84 grams, it was too heavy for wearable use. Its clarity and color saturation, salon-type royal blue with minimal zoning, were so exceptional that any mount would obscure the very qualities it needed to showcase. By the time it arrived in the United States, it had already passed through at least two hands. Private collectors, unnamed in public records. But in 1960, philanthropist Mrs. Polly Logan made a decision that permanently removed the gem from circulation. She donated it to the Smithsonian Institution. No conditions, no valuation, no resale clause. It entered what museums call the Permanent Accession Register, an object held not for display alone, but as part of the National Archive. From that moment, the Logan Sapphire was no longer subject to market logic. It became a public object, an artifact of American curation, geological history, and national cultural diplomacy. It does not have a listed value. Auction houses have no comps to price it. No insurance underwriter has publicly disclosed a coverage model for a stone of this class. Even its security protocols fall under Smithsonian internal policy, and its transport, when approved, must be registered with federal agencies. Collectors have inquired, some discreetly, some publicly, but there is no process. The gem is not for sale, not because of secrecy or sentiment, but because the system that now contains it was not designed to release it. It cannot be inherited. It cannot be collateralized. It cannot leave the vault without curatorial authorization. And even if it did, the moment it appeared at auction, it would be recognized by every serious gemological body, law enforcement agency, and diplomatic office connected to cultural property registries. The Logan Sapphire did not rise in value. It departed with value. By becoming non-negotiable, it became irreplaceable, but also unsellable. Ranked 8th. Blue amber. The gem that changes under your eyes, then fades forever. Blue amber does not appear blue under normal light. That distinction matters because what makes this material extraordinary also makes it commercially unstable. Scientifically, it's still amber, fossilized tree resin, formed over tens of millions of years. But under UV light, especially sunlight with a specific wavelength balance, Indonesian blue amber fluoresces, not subtly, visibly, with strong shifting waves of blue and green across a golden substrate. The effect is tangible, physical, and spectrally measurable, but it's also fragile in every sense that matters to collectors. Fluorescent blue amber is found primarily in Sumatra, Indonesia, within limited lignite and volcanic tuff layers. The blue effect arises not from pigment, but from complex hydrocarbons within the resin's polymer matrix. Hydrocarbons that degrade when exposed to heat, air, and prolonged display. Gemologists can test it, photographers can document it, but owners, whether private or institutional, struggle to preserve it. Some specimens lose their blue fluorescence within 5 years. Others lose surface integrity when stored under improper humidity conditions. Even sealed display cases with climate control have failed to maintain the color response. No treatment stabilizes the effect. Coatings dull the surface. Resins interfere with fluorescence. Refrigerated nitrogen chambers can slow degradation, but introduce cost and handling restrictions incompatible with sale or shipping. The problem isn't just fragility, it's the invisibility of decay. A collector may purchase a specimen with a strong UV reaction, only to discover months later that the effect has weakened, the structure has warped, or the resin has oxidized internally. Refunds aren't issued. Provenance becomes uncertain. And so, over time, markets pull back. Auction houses rarely list blue amber. When they do, disclaimers dominate the lot description. Museums decline permanent display, citing instability and liability. Even dealers in Southeast Asia who specialize in amber tread carefully, pricing based not on weight, clarity, or color, but on short-term fluorescence testing under specific lighting angles. Some pieces do circulate, but circulation is not ownership. And blue amber, authentic blue amber, is never guaranteed to stay what it was when first seen. Ranked 7th. Painite, the specimens that left the market before it existed. Before 1950, painite did not exist in gemology, not as a cutting material, not as a mineral entry, not even as a hypothetical trace in pegmatitic research. It was a missing structure, unrecognized because no one expected zirconium, boron, aluminium, calcium, and trace rare earths to crystallize in the same lattice. But in 1952, mineralogist Arthur C.D. Payne acquired a deep red crystal from Myanmar. It was mislabeled as tourmaline. Only after X-ray diffraction and chemical separation did the structure become clear, a new mineral species. The British Museum catalogued the sample and assigned the name Painite. For nearly 5 decades, that remained one of 3 known crystals. Painite was not sold. It wasn't evaluated for jewelry. It existed as an academic record, a specimen so rare that geology textbooks cited it not for its properties, but for its scarcity. By the year 2000, fewer than 25 known fragments had been confirmed globally. Most of them are uncut. All of them are non-commercial. None had reached auction. None had a formal valuation. No grading system existed. Even hardness, now rated at 8 on Mohs, was based on fragment testing. The refractive index, birefringence, and pleochroism are all known, yet never commercialized. The market didn't ignore painite. It never had the chance to notice it. That changed in the early 2000s, when larger deposits were discovered in the Mogok region of Myanmar. These later specimens were more abundant, often lower in quality, but sufficient for faceting. Painite entered the trade, carefully and briefly. Pricing models were experimental. Color grading varied widely. Clarity tolerance had no standard, yet some gems sold. But collectors of the early specimens, the pre-2000 crystals, didn't participate. These were not just rare. They were structurally distinct. Many had unique zoning. Some displayed optical behavior not seen in later material. A few were deemed scientifically significant and absorbed into museum systems permanently. Today, pre-2000 painites are not in circulation. They are housed in the British Museum, the Gemological Institute of America, the Smithsonian, in sealed academic holdings. None are listed. None has price references. They are not sold. They are not offered. They are not replaced. No gemological lab has published a consistency report on them, and no auction house has disclosed ownership or reappraisal. They existed before a market was ready, and by the time the market formed, they had already been spoken for. Ranked 6th, Hackmanite, the color-changing gem that undermines its value. Hackmanite doesn't shimmer. It doesn't refract across angles or display deep body tone. Instead, its signature behavior emerges after exposure and then disappears again. The phenomenon is called tenebrescence, a light-induced, reversible color change. In Hackmanite, it manifests most clearly between pale grayish-violet and saturated purplish pink. But this isn't surface reflection or heat reaction. It's a genuine shift in the position of electrons in the crystal lattice, driven by UV energy and reversed by visible light. Structurally, Hackmanite is a sulfur-rich variety of sodalite, a feldspathoid mineral with an isometric system. The sodium, aluminium, silicon, and chlorine components are stable, but the sulfur impurities, specifically S2- and S3- radicals, create photochromic centers. These centers trap electrons under UV exposure, temporarily altering the absorption spectrum. The change can be observed under sunlight, black light, or even high-energy LEDs. But the color doesn't last. In most specimens, it fades within minutes. In rare, high-response crystals, particularly from Mont Saint-Hilaire, Canada, or the Koksha Valley, Afghanistan, the saturated color can remain for hours. In total darkness, it may persist longer. But the moment visible light returns, the color resets. This behavior is unique. It fascinates researchers, but it undermines every principle of commercial gemstone handling. There is no way to guarantee what a buyer will see or how long they'll see it. A photograph may show deep purple. An in-person viewing may show nothing. Dealers are forced to use disclaimers. Color unstable, dependent on lighting history, Temporary visual state. Hackmanite cannot be graded under standardized lighting. GIA reports note its tenebrescent properties, but do not assess intensity. No market category exists for reversible stones. No setting can preserve the effect. Jewelers cannot sell a color that vanishes in the showroom. Attempts to stabilize the reaction through coating, irradiation, or thermal sealing have either destroyed the mineral or eliminated its responsiveness. Collectors are left with specimens that perform unpredictably only under lab-replicated conditions. That unpredictability limits insurance, it voids guarantees, it prevents price consistency, and over time, it disincentivizes both resale and long-term storage. The problem isn't rarity, it's that the very act of viewing changes what's being viewed and makes the stone unfit for valuation. Ranked 5th, Star Garnet, the one-time optical hybrid that was never repeated. Star Garnet is known. In Idaho, it's expected. These are almandine pyrope composites formed in metamorphic zones under high aluminum pressure. Their deep red tones and crystalline denseness make them opaque. But when cut and cabochon, the structure reveals a star. Usually, that star has 4 rays. In rare cases, 6. But one specimen, recorded and cataloged in the 1990s by a regional gem survey, showed both, simultaneously, not overlapping, not misaligned, not a miscut reflection, a hybrid asterism, 4-ray vertical, 6-ray diagonal, intersecting, responsive, and structurally integrated. It passed lab inspection, it was photographed. The optical behavior was confirmed, not anecdotal. The geology was consistent with Idaho's garnet-bearing schists. No foreign inclusions, no signs of artificial interference, just rudel-like needle arrangements layered in a dual-axis matrix, reflecting light from 2 structurally distinct planes. To date, no other specimen has reproduced the effect. The original piece was never mounted. Its owner declined multiple offers. The State Mineral Office requested access to re-examine it. Permission was not granted. It is privately held, in storage. No current images exist beyond the original lab prints. It is not for sale. No gemologist has reclassified garnet as capable of hybrid asterism. No journal has published replication results. The optical behavior does not match known chromatic interference patterns or standard chatoyancy models. That means there's no way to grade it, no way to compare it, and no market precedent to anchor it. Retail jewelers cannot explain a dual star. Auction houses cannot authenticate a feature no one else has seen. Laboratories cannot issue symmetry reports on intersecting asterisms without multiple confirmed examples. And so the sample remains anecdotal, but verified. Not a myth, not folklore, not a simulation, a confirmed physical object. And because it's singular, it's fundamentally untradeable. Ranked 4th, Poudretteite, the gem. So rare, no one dared to set a price. The first Poudretteite ever described didn't come from Myanmar. It came from Mont-Saint-Hilaire, Quebec, inside a quarry operated by the Poudrette family. In 1986, a tiny fragment, translucent, pink, and under 1 carat, was confirmed as a new mineral species. Its chemical structure was distinctive: potassium, sodium, boron, aluminium, silicon, and oxygen. A trigonal crystal system, unstable under most environmental conditions. The sample was too small for cutting, but sufficient to be included in mineralogy databases. For nearly 2 decades, Poudretteite remained an academic entry. Rare but not valuable. Real but not commercial. Then in the early 2000s, reports emerged from Mogok, Myanmar. Not of rough, but of cut stones. Transparent, pink, faceted Poudretteite. Larger than a carat. 1 in 5. Gemologists were forced to reevaluate. The Mogok material shared the same structure, but was vastly more precise, more stable, and optically suitable for gem use. It refracted cleanly. It fluoresced weakly. It was held under basic polishing, and yet it couldn't be priced. The reason was not rarity alone. It was non-repetitive. Only a handful of these Myanmar stones have ever been confirmed, and nearly all of them remain in private or institutional hands. The largest known specimen, at over 9 carats, resides at the Smithsonian. Others are unlisted. GIA reports exist, but with qualifiers. Sample cannot be directly compared to commercial inventory. No reference standard for color tone. Faceted Poudretteite remains scientifically unique. No gem dealer has issued consistent pricing. No auction house has logged a verified sale with repeat specimens. Jewelers refuse to mount it, citing fracture risk and insufficient replacement inventory. Even the Burmese government has not included it in official gemstone export frameworks because production cannot be forecast. The issue is not that Poudretteite lacks value. The reason is that no one can define what its value would refer to. If it breaks, there is no replacement. If it fades, there is no treatment. If it sells, there is no baseline to compare the sale to. The market cannot sustain a gemstone that has never appeared in volume, has no means of being resourced, and offers no second chance for error. That's why Poudretteite remains where it started, not in vaults, not in displays, but in mineralogical records where the price column is left blank. Ranked third, Zektzerite, the mineral that deteriorates faster than it can be sold. Zektzerite was never meant to be a gemstone. It was discovered in the 1960s at the Washington Pass pegmatite in the Cascade Mountains, a zone rich in rare element-bearing silicates. The crystals were striking, pale pink, sometimes lavender, with complex cleavage planes and pseudo-cubic habits. Initial excitement was geological, not commercial. The structure, lithium, sodium, zirconium, silicon 6 oxygen 15, places Zektzerite in a rare category of zirconium lithium silicates, transparent enough to be faceted, soft enough to be polished, and visually unusual. But attempts to introduce Zektzerite into the gem trade failed almost immediately. The first issue was structural. Cleavage along multiple planes meant that cutting the crystal, even with fine abrasives, produced fractures. Polishing required low pressure and cold cycles, but even when successful, the result remained vulnerable. Over time, in some environments, Zektzerite surfaces began to cloud. In samples exposed to moderate humidity, microcracks widened. Spectroscopy revealed alteration zones, where lithium leached and secondary hydration layers formed. Even sealed storage couldn't reverse the transformation. At least 2 high-clarity stones submitted to GIA for analysis in the 1990s discolored within months. One lost optical transparency altogether. Another developed surface crazing, thin lines that fractured internal light paths and destabilized the stone under minimal pressure. The problem was intrinsic. Zektzerite was not metastable. It was anti-stable under gem conditions. Temperature swings, UV exposure, and even atmospheric moisture interfered with its internal cohesion. No treatments helped. Coating compromised color. Impregnation altered refractive behavior. Annealing eradicated structural integrity. Collectors pulled back. Labs flagged it as unstable. Jewelers never adopted it. Auction houses refused to list it. Even the specimen market, which trades in rare minerals regardless of cut, focused on uncut, unpolished crystals only. Zektzerite remains a scientifically important material. It offers insight into pegmatitic mineral systems and late-stage fluid evolution. But it is not and will never be a gemstone in circulation. It cannot survive transport. It cannot survive wear. And sometimes it cannot survive being looked at under direct light. Ranked second, Trapiche Emerald. Too unique to grade, too inconsistent to price. Trapiche emeralds do not form like other emeralds, where most emerald crystals grow as hexagonal prisms, vertically uninterrupted and optically consistent. Trapiche emeralds display a 6-rayed radial pattern, like spokes emerging from a central hub. But the resemblance ends there. The formation is discontinuous. The black lines are not inclusions. They're organic matter, sometimes albite, sometimes carbonaceous shale, trapped between interrupted growth sectors. These interruptions fracture light, they destabilize Poland, and they make optical symmetry impossible to predict. The most recognized trapiche material comes from Muzo and Peñas Blancas, Colombia, where emeralds form under unusually high pressure near tectonic shear zones. During crystal growth, rapid fluid fluctuations cause phase separation. Instead of a continuous hexagonal lattice, The crystal segments form pie-slice sectors with dark boundaries. These boundaries, the trapiche arms, they are not consistent in width, length, opacity, or alignment. No two specimens match. No growth can be reproduced. Lab synthesis has failed to generate trapiche patterns under controlled conditions. In gemology, consistency enables valuation. Trapiche emeralds do not offer consistency. Color zones vary across the same crystal. Refractive indices shift across spokes. Clarity cannot be evaluated using standard inclusion maps. And carat weight often includes inert, non-emerald material, which no current report can proportionally disaggregate. GIA and other major labs do identify trapiche emeralds, but they do not grade them. Reports may describe the pattern, but offer no cut grade, no clarity scale, no symmetry metric. Color descriptions are broad. Treatments, if present, are difficult to trace due to optical interference from the spokes themselves. Auction houses hesitate. High-end jewelers avoid them. The few trapiche emeralds that sell are handled outside conventional price structures. Through private networks, negotiated by collectors who accept that no comparison exists. Even within Colombia, many specimens are retained rather than sold. Local dealers refer to them as honor pieces, not inventory. Some are passed through generations. Some remain uncut. Others are set into ceremonial objects and never removed. Trapiche emeralds aren't too flawed to be sold. They're too anomalous to be placed inside any system that would make their price mean anything repeatable. In first place, the Dom Pedro Aquamarine, too singular for any system of ownership. The Dom Pedro Aquamarine is not a gemstone in circulation. It is not part of any known market. And despite being one of the most physically perfect examples of its species, it cannot and will not be owned again in the conventional sense. The original crystal was recovered in the late 1980s from the Minas Gerais region of Brazil, inside a pegmatitic pocket known for large barrel formations. Its dimensions exceeded common recovery expectations. Over 2 feet long, weighing nearly 45 kilograms. Deep blue-green in hue, with high internal transparency, and no significant structural flaws. Initially, the crystal was intended for cutting, possibly into thousands of carats worth of calibrated stones. But during transport, part of it fractured. The surviving piece, still massive by any metric, became the subject of debate. Cutting it into smaller stones would maximize value. Leaving it uncut would preserve its geological context. But neither approach fit what followed. The crystal was turned over to Bernd Munsteiner, a German master lapidary with a background in optical sculpture. Over several months, it was studied, not for gem yield, but for structural integrity, light performance, and visual mass. Munsteiner did not facet it conventionally. He sculpted it into a monumental obelisk, 14 inches tall, weighing 10,363 carats, shaped with reverse faceting along the interior to create light deflection that no jewelry mounting could ever replicate. The result was singular. No other aquamarine of this size, clarity, and sculptural complexity exists. In 1999, the piece was donated to the Smithsonian Institution by collector Jane Mitchell and her husband, in memory of their son. It entered the permanent collection, not as a gemstone, but as a national-level cultural object. It is not for sale, it is not priced, it is not insurable in conventional terms. No other specimen has matched it. No attempt to recreate the cut has been made. Auction houses list it only as a reference image. Gem labs do not issue reports on sculptural pieces of this scale. Museums cannot mount a second version because no second version exists. The Dom Pedro Aquamarine broke the system by bypassing it. It does not sit in vaults. It is not rotated between private collections, and it will not return to market because it was never part of the market to begin with. None of these gemstones failed to impress. None were rejected due to quality, price, or demand. Each was excluded for one reason. They broke the systems built to contain them. Too reactive to store, too unique to classify, too public to resell, too unpredictable to insure. What connects them isn't value, it's incompatibility. With standard grading, with resale infrastructure, with the assumption that everything rare must be collectible. They weren't forgotten. They weren't lost. They were seen, documented, and then removed from the logic of possession. That removal in itself made them permanent. Let us know which one resonates with you in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel for more content like this.